Moving on to example 2. So for this example and the next one, I just want to quickly show you how you can apply the principle of genetics and inheritance to the plants and animals as well. And we actually use this a lot in agriculture. So this question will talk about the differences between a tall pea plant and a short or dwarf pea plant. And this is information that's already given to you. T is tall, so there's already a letter assigned here. T is the tall allele, and lowercase t is going to be the dwarf allele. And tall pea plants is dominant. That's supposed to say is dominant over dwarf pea plants. Okay, so that's the information about the alleles. Dwarf pea plants are crossed with heterozygous tall pea plants, predict the phenotype and genotype ratios of the F1 generation, also the offspring. Show notation and working. So let's go through our steps again. Step 1 is to designate letters to represent the alleles. So this already is done for you. So capital T is tall alleles, and lowercase t is the dwarf or short allele. And the lowercase, so the tall allele is the dominant allele out of the two. Step 2, write out the phenotype and genotype of the prospective parents. Okay, so I think we're given the phenotype, so we know that one of the parents plant is going to be the dwarf pea plant. So you have, this is the parent of the pea, so you have the dwarf. I can't actually spell, and the dwarf pea plants are crossed with heterozygous tall, so they tall. So you have, this is the phenotype of the parents. One is short or dwarf, the other is tall. And the genotype. So in order for a plant to be short, because this is the recessive trait, the genotype of the parents. So let's just write here, this is a phenotype. The genotype of this parent has to be homozygous recessive. So lowercase t, lowercase t. And the other parent, it actually tells you in the question that the other parents are heterozygous, which means that will be uppercase t and lowercase t. So I've written down the phenotype and genotype of the prospective parents. So now I'm gonna do step 3 and 4 at the same time. So I'm gonna start with my Punnett square. So it's one here, and then you have that. Okay. So this is my Punnett square, and I basically need to write out the genotype of the parental gamete. So these are plants. Also, I don't have any information in the question of which one is the maternal plant and which one's a paternal plant. So I'm just going to put the draft one here. So the draft one can give only one type of allele to the offspring, and that is the lowercase t. So one lowercase t can go here, one can go here. And these gametes are produced via meiosis. The tall plant can either give uppercase t or lowercase t. So these are the gametes of, this is from the draft plant and this is from the tall plant. And then draw your Punnett square. And then from here, I could work out the potential genotype of the offspring. So you could have uppercase t, or lowercase t, like so, and then uppercase t. So these are the possible allele combinations of the offspring. So if you talk about the genotypic ratio, which is the first part of the question, so genotype ratio or genotypic ratio. So there are two possible genotypes here. So uppercase t, lowercase t, or lowercase t. And the ratio is you have two of these, two of the first one and two of the second one. So I'm just going to write 2 by 2, which you can simplify if you divide everything by 2. So the ratio is a 1 by 1, or you can say 50%, 50%. Now the phenotype ratio is when you have to describe the actual characteristic that can be observed. So 50% of the plants will be tall from this genotype, and 50% of the plant will be dwarf from the other phenotype. So it's also a 1 by 1 ratio. So answer the question, genotype ratio, phenotype ratio. So that's example 2. Moving on to example 3, we're looking at green versus yellow pea pods. So let's start again. In pea plants, green pea pods is dominant and yellow pea pod is recessive. So these are the different potential colors that the pea pods can have. I don't think I've ever seen a yellow pea pod before, but I haven't seen that many pea pods in my lifetime anyway. So you need to determine the genotypic ratio and phenotypic ratio of the offspring generation from a cross between two hybrid, so we're using a different word here, hybrid green pea plants. Okay, so let's start with step one. So this question, you don't get as much information as the previous two questions, so you have to assign the letters yourself, and there is no rule in terms of what letter you can use. I normally go for the one, if you can, that there is this distinct difference between the lowercase and the capital versions of the letters. Like don't go with C, because sometimes you just write the lowercase really big and it looks like the uppercase. So go with something that you can distinguish between the two. So designate letters represent the allele. So dominant is capital, recessive is lowercase. So we'll know that green is dominant. So I'm just gonna assume that green is going to be capital G, and yellow, instead of writing Y, I'm going to go with the lowercase g. So these are my alleles. There are two alleles, green pea pod, which is dominant allele, so it's capital G, and yellow pea pod, which is the recessive allele, so lowercase g. And then now I'm going to write out the phenotype and genotype of the parents. So both parents are green pea plants and they hybrid. So the phenotype, it's going to be just two green pea plants. So green crossing with green, also written in green. And the genotype, so the information here, the question have to tell you what the genotype is. So you know that they hybrid. Now hybrid, just another way of saying that they heterozygous at this trait, which means that they will have one copy of the dominant allele and one copy of the recessive allele, and this is for both parents. So that's the phenotype and genotype of the parents. I'm going to do step 3 and 4 together again. So I'm going to start with setting up my Punnett square. So this is year 10, but obviously, or maybe not obvious, this is year 10, which is why you don't have that. You only have what's called a monohybrid cross. So there's only one gene that's being used here, but you can have other things. It gets a lot more exciting later if you choose to continue with biology in VCE. So the genotype of the gametes of the parent, so one parent can give, let's say this parent can give a capital G or a lowercase g. This is from one parent, and the other parent could also give either capital G or lowercase g. All right, and now the last thing I'm going to do is just to complete the Punnett square to obtain the potential genotypes of the offspring. So you can have capital G, capital G, capital G, lowercase g, capital G, lowercase g, or both of the alleles being lowercase g. So you actually have more than two combinations in this case. Okay, so that's that. Now from here, we're going to write the phenotypic and genotypic ratio. I totally run out of room here, so let's see. So we're going to go, the genotype is, so you have capital G, capital G, capital G, lowercase g, and then lowercase g, lowercase g. So there's one of this, two of the other, and then one of the last one. So the genotypic ratio is a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio between the three possible genotype combination. Now the phenotypic ratio is going to be different because both the homozygous dominant, so the capital G, both this one and these two, the phenotype that you see is just going to be green pea pod. So the phenotype is actually green over yellow, being a 3 to 1 ratio, because 3 out of the 4 possible genotypes of the offspring is going to show the trait green. So that's going to be the genotype and phenotype ratio for the F1 generation in this case. Now, example 2 and 3 actually demonstrate the experiment that was used in order to come up with all of this, the whole idea of dominant recessive, and that's Mendelian genetics. And I just want to give like a quick maybe 30 seconds explanation of the history behind this. So Mendel, shown in picture here, was a monk, and he essentially did a lot of experiment with peas in the past, and it took a very, very long time. And the reason why he used peas because he could breed them really quickly, and then he did a lot of counting and kept really careful records of the ratios of, in the case of the example we did earlier, green versus yellow peas. And that's how the whole concept of dominant recessive and the fact that you inherited a trait from each parent, all of that came about because of these experiments that were done by Mendel. So it is very important to appreciate, I think, how much effort and time somebody had put in order for us to have a better understanding of genetics. And look at the number of pea plants that he had. We're talking thousands of peas here. He did have quite a bit of time anyway. So there's that.